rating, late 2010. The smartphone world was already two giants deep. Apple's iPhone had been redefining mobile computing for 3 years. Google's Android was exploding with hundreds of thousands of activations every day. And then came Microsoft. It unveiled an operating system that looked like nothing else on the market. No rows of static icons, no skeuomorphic fluff. Instead, live tiles, flat, fast, and fluid. The Metro design language was a radical bet on typography and color. According to The Verge, it was, and I quote, the boldest and most original reimagining of what a smartphone can be after the iPhone. The tech press swooned. But there was a problem. Microsoft was arriving exactly 3 years too late. And in the smartphone business, 3 years might as well be a lifetime. By November 2010, iOS and Android together commanded over 75% of the global smartphone market. Research firms like Gartner and IDC painted a picture of a duopoly that was only tightening its grip. Apple's App Store had over 300 zeros apps. Android market, soon to be Google Play, was close behind. Developers were already committed. Consumers were locked into ecosystems of apps, music, and contacts. Microsoft's pitch? Start over. Trust us, the new Windows Phone is better. But being better rarely beats being first. And in this fight, first place was already taken. The window for a third mobile ecosystem was closing fast. Microsoft just didn't know it yet. The early Windows Phone demos were genuinely stunning. Live tiles flipped and updated with real info, weather, messages, photos, all without opening an app. The People Hub pulled together all your social feeds into one place. The interface was buttery smooth on low-end hardware, something Android struggled with. Critics lauded Microsoft's fresh approach, but beautiful design doesn't sell phones on its own. The first devices like the HTC HD7 and Samsung Focus were fine but not category defining. Without a hero product, something like the iPhone or a Galaxy S, Windows Phone felt more like a science experiment than a serious rival. And Microsoft knew it. That's why it picked up the phone to Nokia. In February 2011, Microsoft CEO Steve Ballmer and Nokia CEO Stephen Illup stood together in London and announced a partnership. Nokia, the once dominant phone maker, would ditch its own operating systems, including the promising MeeGo, and adopt Windows Phone as its primary platform. Illup, a former Microsoft executive, framed it as a bold move to create a third ecosystem. According to Wikipedia, the deal included billions in platform support payments from Microsoft to Nokia. Analysts were split. Some called it a masterstroke, others saw two drowning men clinging to each other. The first Lumia phones arrived later that year, colorful, polycarbonate, and unique. But the world was already buying iPhones and Android. The Lumia line would struggle to crack 5% global market share. 2 years in, the partnership wasn't enough, so Microsoft went nuclear. In September 2013, it announced it would acquire Nokia's entire devices and services division for 54 billion euros. The deal closed in April 2014. Microsoft was now a hardware company with factories in Finland and thousands of new employees. Steve Ballmer's vision, a devices and services giant. According to Wikipedia, the move was meant to accelerate Microsoft's mobile share, but the markets were skeptical. The deal raised concerns about culture clashes, integration nightmares, and whether Microsoft even knew how to sell phones. The biggest problem? The ecosystem clock didn't stop just because Microsoft wrote a check. Here's the number that really matters, 3.9%. That was Windows Phone's market share in the United States, according to a Computerworld report mid-decade. And that tiny slice of the pie crippled everything. In the app economy, scale is everything. Developers go where the users are, and users go where the apps are. It's a flywheel, one Microsoft could never spin up. By 2015, Windows Phone had fewer than 400 zeros apps. iOS and Android each had over 1 million. Missing were not just niche tools, but household names. YouTube, Instagram, Snapchat, Starbucks, most banking apps. Even when big apps did arrive, they were often outdated or half-baked. The app gap became a term of mockery in tech blogs, and no amount of UI polish could fill it. For real people, the app gap wasn't academic. Imagine buying a sleek new Lumia 1020 with a 41 megapixel camera, truly ahead of its time, only to discover you can't install your bank's app. Can't watch your kids on the family Snapchat, can't even order a latte from Starbucks without a workaround. Each missing app was a tiny broken promise. Microsoft tried everything, paying developers directly, offering free ports, even building tools to convert iOS and Android code. But the math was cruel. With 3.9% share, why would a developer spend months on a Windows version for a fraction of the revenue? The ecosystem had locked in, and Windows Phone was locked out. On July 8, 2015, Microsoft dropped a bombshell. It announced a $7.6 billion impairment charge, essentially writing off the entire value of the Nokia acquisition, plus 800 job cuts, mostly in the phone division. According to The Verge, the write-off was larger than the purchase price itself. Satya Nadella, who had replaced Ballmer as CEO, was brutally honest in his memo to employees. We are moving from a strategy to grow a standalone phone business to a strategy to grow and create a vibrant Windows ecosystem, including our first-party device family. Translation, the standalone phone business is dead. The Lumia era was over. Microsoft had spent billions to learn a lesson the rest of the industry already knew. The write-off was a watershed. Nadella pivoted hard to cloud and productivity. Windows Phone wasn't killed outright, not yet, but it was put on life support. No more new flagship devices. The engineering team was gutted. Azure and Office became the stars. Meanwhile, Android and iOS kept growing. Even Microsoft's own apps, Office, OneDrive, Outlook, were now better on competing platforms. It was a quiet admission. The war for mobile OS was over, and Microsoft had lost. The smartest minds in Redmond could build a fantastic OS, but they couldn't turn back time. The smartphone market had matured, and there was no room for a third wheel. 2016 and 2017 were the slow fade. Windows Phone market share dipped below 1% globally. The Windows Store became a ghost town. Developers, already scarce, pulled their remaining apps. Even Microsoft's own services sometimes neglected the platform. The company released a few low-end Lumias, like the 550 and 650, but they felt like afterthoughts. The community of die-hard fans dwindled. Tech blogs stopped reviewing Windows phones. The hashtag Epsilon Windows Phone became a punchline. It was not a crash, but a quiet, protracted extinction. And then, finally, the plug was pulled. October 2017. Joe Belfiore, the corporate vice president in charge of Windows Phone, took to Twitter with a thread that amounted to an obituary. He confirmed that Microsoft would no longer develop new features or hardware for Windows 10 Mobile. The Verge marked the occasion with an article titled Windows Phone was a glorious failure, and it truly was. The platform that had promised to break the duopoly had itself been broken. 2 months later, Microsoft removed Windows Phone from its official website. The remains of the Nokia deal were long gone. Windows Phone joined Zune, Kin, Groove Music, and a collection of other ambitious Microsoft hardware failures on the tech scrap heap. But here's the strange thing in death. Windows Phone got more love than it ever did in life. Tech enthusiasts remembered the gorgeous live tiles, the smooth performance, the cohesive design. The Lumia 1020's camera was a marvel, a 41 megapixel PureView sensor that still rivals some modern phones. The People Hub's unified inbox was ahead of its time. Even the concept of glanceable information on a lock screen became standard later. Many confessed they missed Windows Phone's simplicity and focus. It wasn't a bad product, it was a product out of time. And that may be the cruelest failure of all being right, but too late for the world to care. The Windows Phone story is a cautionary tale with a simple moral timing beats everything. Microsoft had the resources. It spent over $7 billion. It had the talent, designers, and engineers who built a genuinely innovative OS. It even had the hardware legacy of Nokia. But it didn't have the one thing that mattered, a market that was still willing to switch. By 2010, the smartphone wars were already reaching a ceasefire. iOS and Android had won, and all the money and engineering in the world couldn't undo that. In the graveyard of tech, Windows Phone is the most expensive tombstone, a reminder that sometimes it's not about who's best, it's about who's first.